he's charging, that's why she market prices are down, and offset fee comes into play to cover the costs of this.
So does is it kind of like stocks?
Yeah, and there's, like, in what this contract is based on is that offset fee is based on the cost of the OCC, which is because that's driving kind of the and that's what they're going to base that offset fee on, where that OCC. It's, well, different regions have different, so it's the Chicago-based commodities market, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order, the Moorhead City Council special meeting December 2nd, 2019. It is approximately 5:31 p.m. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Shelley Dahlquist.
Here.
Sarah Watson-Curry.
Here.
Shelley Carlson.
Here.
Heidi Durand. Deb White. Larry Seljevold.
Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here. Steve
Lindas.
Here.
And Mayor Jonathan Judd.
Here. You can please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone. The Moorhead City Council welcomes and encourages public input on issues on the agenda or of general community interest, time and council permitting. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations. Advertised public hearings are scheduled so that the public is afforded an opportunity to speak. Public hearings are generally scheduled 15 to 30 minutes after the start of the meeting. However, the starting time may vary depending on other scheduled agenda items. Citizens wishing to address the mayor and council regarding a specific agenda item other than public hearings will be afforded an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Citizens wishing to speak on matters not listed on the agenda will be afforded the opportunity to do so under the heading Citizens Addressing the Council, usually scheduled at the beginning and end of the agenda. Each person requesting the opportunity to speak is asked to fill out a request to speak form, which are located right outside in the lobby area. And for those at home, we're now on agenda item number 3, which are agenda amendments. Madam City Manager, are there any amendments to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we are, it's been requested number 16 on the polling locations be pulled from consent, and number 14 regarding Moorhead Public Service be pulled from consent.
Are there any other amendments to the agenda other than those stated? Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda with the amendments of numbers 14 and 16 being pulled off of consent?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember White. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moves us to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Watson Curry, seconded by Councilmember Seljevold. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We move on to number 5A in the agenda, which is an update on our Community Capital Improvement Program, presented by Mr. Steve Moore, Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're bringing up some slides. We're going to talk about our community. It's now called, right now it's called the Community Capital Improvement Program, and these are 5 projects that were brought and developed during our strategic planning, and we talked briefly about this earlier a couple weeks ago. And essentially, what we're going to recommend tonight is a slight change in that list of community projects. And currently, our project list consists of river corridor projects, a community and aquatic center, a Southside Dog Park, an inclusive playground, lighting at Southside Regional Park, and a grandstand at Matson Field. So our recommendation is, since developing this community action plan, we've had an organization come forward, the FM Rotary Foundation, with an idea of a nature playground. And it's an exciting opportunity to bring something that's unique to the Fargo-Moorhead area and place it right at Riverfront Park, where it's centrally located near our downtown and near North Moorhead residents, near residents in downtown Fargo. And Fargo-Moorhead Rotary Foundation is taking the lead on this project. They are going to do all the fundraising, and they are going to do the design work, and they have partnered with developers and financial institutions to bring this project to fruition. So in order to support this project from the city, we'd like to recommend adding that into our community capital improvement program. And as we do that, we would also recommend that we move out our Southside Regional Lighting Project. That's being looked at in partnership with FM Athletics. And right now, we're just kind of on hold for funding. And then the Matson grandstand is also on hold for fundraising. And so we're kind of at a standstill on those 2 projects. So our recommendation is to move those 2 projects out, move the FM Rotary Foundation project for a nature playground in, and then have that as our 5 projects that we'll focus our efforts on as a city staff. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Moore? Councilmember White?
Thanks, Steve. I just wanted to clarify too, in regard to the Matson Field and the Southside Regional Project, Parks projects, those aren't, it's really just so everyone understands, it's not as if anything's changing with that, and we could still receive donations for those, and we have those in our wish booklet too.
That's a great point,
and,
yes.
Yeah, so it's not as if anything's changing, it's just that we're still in the process of fundraising for those. And then we also have this other great opportunity.
That is correct, yes. In order to manage our staff time to dedicate towards supporting these projects, we like to keep that around 5 projects. And so, yes, if something clicks in with those other 2, we are certainly going to bring them back on board. And yes, they're definitely fundraising opportunities.
Great, thanks.
Councilmember Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question, just kind of more comments about this incredible project. The Rotary, there were actually 5 clubs around the Fargo-Moorhead area that came together and worked with the landscaping architecture program at NDSU to develop this proposal, and they've already raised $31,000. The total cost of the project, I believe, is going to be about $600,000. And for those of you who are interested in seeing a little bit about what a natural playground would look like, the Rotary Foundation has a 4-minute video on their website that really displays and showcases the different things that could be done. Some of the things that they talked about at the park board presentation was a bike skill area, which was absolutely incredible, possibly an ice skating ribbon, some water features. They're really in the design phase right now, but they're really excited, and I, for one, am very supportive of this because it would be incredible, not just for our city, but particularly for our downtown area.
Councilmember Lindas?
So I'm also extremely supportive of this because I've been and played in these kind of places. Do we need a motion?
Absolutely. If we're going to approve the change, yep, there'll have to be a motion and a
So
second.
I would like to make a motion to approve the change.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Lindas, seconded by Councilmember Hendrickson. Madam City Manager, did you have?
I do, thank
Something to
you.
add to that
Steve,
discussion?
was it your intent, because we don't have a resolution, was it your intent to get a formal motion or just guidance tonight?
Just guidance. It doesn't really require a resolution, but we wanted agreement of the council members that these will be our focus areas.
So head nods would be good, because we don't have a resolution to put in front of you.
That's why I was looking at
Yes.
the
Sorry.
language here,
Thank you.
and it stated to consider a change, so I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
see
what I thought.
resolution, so I was confused on that. So consensus, head nods.
Doesn't say-
Okay. You move the head nod. Councilmember Selchvold.
Well, one comment I would like to make is that, I mean, the Rotary, it sounds like they're going to fund this thing like 100%. The other ones all have donations on it, and I know that we can get, there's a fundraising arm, but, I mean, no colleges, no other fundraising, unless they'd have a development officer. I mean, is this something that, I mean, we're kind of relying on somebody just to go to a website and say, I'm going to write a big check? And it seems kind of unfair is that the youth have to fundraise and that other things do not. So I think people donate, it's wonderful, but I don't think we can rely on a website or word of mouth. It might be something to look at.
Yeah, that's an excellent
Go ahead.
point, and our plan is to recruit project champions. Just as FM Rotary is the project champion for the nature playground, is that we find a project champion to lead those efforts, so we just don't rely on it. So that's exactly what we'd like to do.
Madam City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Seldervold, we're kind of in our infancy stage, or the infancy stage as far as fundraising. In previous years, we've never had these kind of projects even identified because we didn't have any way to fund them. We've worked the last couple of years on trying to figure out how to fund some of these things, creating the Moorhead Community Fund, direct donations. Right now, we've got staff going around to every single service club and doing presentations, handing out the wish book, handing out our capital book. You're absolutely right. Those are great questions. We are still moving towards how we're going to do this long term, but we don't have the resources in the budget, or we never have. We've never had these kind of projects, so we're just starting this. But you're absolutely right. Steve's right in that we are looking for champions, and we are meeting with people, meeting with banks, meeting with philanthropists throughout the community. And so we need each of you and our community to reach out and kind of doing this as a grassroots kind of effort. So.
And I thank you, City Manager Wilkers, for mentioning that, because I think the public should know that there are a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions taking place regarding fundraising. So I think that's good to note that there is behind-the-scenes action going on to solicit donations and fundraise. Councilmember White.
I just wanted to say, just tagging on to what Councilmember Seljabold said, is maybe part of it is just, obviously fundraising is great. If we can get outside support, that's really helps us to do more that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. But I think part of it is looking at overall, as we grow as a city, reminding ourselves that this is part of what brings people to Moorhead. And so when we're talking about budgeting, is that as we grow, if we have places where we can add to our park and recreation budget, it's something to continually explore, because these are things that are so vital for our youth. And again, it's part of what gives us that quality of life that make people want to live in Moorhead. So it's important.
Agreed. Thank you for sharing that, Councilmember White. Councilmember Watson Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add on to that as well, the community fund that we have, has it been in place for only a year? I just wanted to, a little bit of history too. Though it can support efforts outside of the Parks and Rec Department, that's kind of where it was explored originally. And we did look and interview with other foundations too, as far as fundraising, and it was definitely identified that that is a staffing issue if you want to be effective and have a plan. So they did kind of identify that. This is sort of the first step too, but I would say keep it in mind for future budgeting, is that the money doesn't come in without significant staff effort too. So that was identified, and that was something that wasn't financially feasible at this point. So I'm glad that we're taking steps in the right direction. And thank you to our community champions, FM Rotary and the other groups too as well.
Any other discussion? I'm supposed to clean the record then, and that's my fault because I saw the language but not the resolution, because there isn't one. we need to probably have someone withdraw their motion.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay with the second?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll second the withdrawal.
That's a little bit of my former career coming up. All right.
Loose ends.
All
I
right,
think
thank
we
you.
got the head nod, so I think we're good to go.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you. And I believe we cannot proceed with 5B, correct? Mr. City Attorney? We can go on to 6?
Not until 6.
Right,
Not until
right, that's right. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, you'd want to go on to item number 6 on the agenda.
Okay. So then item number 6 on the agenda, we're coming back to 5B because that does not start until 6 o'clock, will be the approval of the minutes from November 12th, 2019. Is there any amendments or modifications or corrections?
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We move to item number 7, citizens addressing the council. We do have one resident who wishes to address the council. Mr. Is it Monroe? Yes. Okay. Can you please step to the podium? If you don't mind, if you can please just state your name and your address here in Moorhead.
My name is Gabriel Monroe, and I live at 303 7th Street South in Moorhead.
And then we'll give you 3 minutes to speak, and you're on.
Okay. I've got a problem with the snow removal. I've lived there for some 20 years, and I've talked over the years to city council people, city manager, and they've come over, and the city engineer there's Trinity Church there on the east side of me, and they take most of the snow from the church and they grade it over to the west side, and I'm on just that other side there. Right now, the snow is piled probably this much high on my sidewalk, and it's covering up a fire hydrant. And I've talked to them, and they say, oh, no, we always cut it in half, but they don't. They take it from the church and they move it over. And so all the neighbors on the west side get snow this high. On the east side, it's probably 7, 8 inches now, and I've got 4 feet of snow there. And I'm just wondering how you could correct this.
Mr. Monroe, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. The person who would handle that is sitting right back there, and Mr. Moore, and he would be the person that you would contact. Have you contacted our Public Works?
I have years ago, yeah, and they assured me it won't happen again, and now with this big snowfall, it happened again, and this is the beginning.
Can I address that?
Absolutely, yeah, please.
Good to see you again. Yeah, we talked a couple years ago, and I know I heard you call my office about 2 hours ago, talking to Lindsay. So, yes, it's a challenging area. So Tyler used to do your route for the last couple years, and we had it worked out on how to do it. So now I have another driver doing that. So we just talked about it, and we're gonna go back. We're gonna get a hold of Tyler and make sure that Tyler explains to Tim how it's done, and we'll do it that way. So we have been starting, and we adjust the plows on your side and push just a smaller amount over your way in the past. That's what Tyler had done. Pushed it towards the center, and then we have to make multiple passes to continue to push it over to the other side. And we used to do it we would break off while we're doing the main avenue, because it's in the middle of the night, push that all there, and then it's hauled away by Trinity as part of their contractor. So that was not done this past time, but I've just talked to my crew chief this morning, or this afternoon after you called, and we'll work through that. I appreciate it. So, yeah, you bet. And apologize for the change in personnel and the change in service, but when we do those different variations to our normal processes, sometimes it's personnel dependent, and we'll try to improve that.
Do you think that fire hydrant could be cleaned down?
Yeah, we'll come by, and
Okay.
we'll
Thank you so much.
We'll make a change, yep.
No.
So,
Thank you. And I really appreciate it, and on behalf of the council, Mr. Monroe, for you coming and bringing that to our attention. Obviously, you know, we've got people who are going to help you out and get that resolved. And, you know, for folks at home, you know, I know it's the first big snowfall. I know there's a lot of frustration, a lot of agitation. Just know that our city staff, they're working very, very hard to make sure that the roads are all cleared, you know, and mistakes are going to happen. But thank you for bringing it to our attention, because Mr. Moore is going to take care of you. And for those at home, feel free to just make a phone call and let Public Works know. And if we can be civil and just try to give us a chance to correct the problem, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. You good to go. Have a good evening and happy shoveling. Item number 8, mayor and council appointments. Madam City Manager, I did provide you a list earlier, so I'm not sure if that would...
Yeah, that would have had to been posted 3 days prior to the agenda, so I would suggest that we get it out to the council members to see if they're okay or if they have any major concerns, and let you know. We'll put it on the next week's council agenda, so, okay?
Not a problem. And if you could forward, I think...
I can, yes.
That would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to item number 9, which is a public hearing. Public hearing to address the Community Development Block Grant 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan and 2020 Action Plan hearing only. And if we can get a motion to go into public hearing. So move. Motion made by Councilmember Saldival, seconded by Councilmember Lindas. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All in favor, all opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're in public hearing. Mr. Huffman.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening. My name is Joshua Huffman. I'm a Community Development Program Administrator for the city. Thank you for holding this public hearing for the 2020 through 2024 Consolidated Plan and 2020 Action Plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program. For brevity's sake, I'll refer to that as CDBG throughout the rest of the hearing. Please note that no action is needed tonight. Final council consideration will be next week's meeting on December 9th. We are currently in a 30-day public comment period, which ends on December 7th. No comments have been received to date. Should any be received prior to next week's meeting, they will be shared with council. There was significant citizen participation in developing this plan through a community survey, through 2 public meetings that were held on September 17th and 25th, and various other consultations with area agencies. Recommended investment priorities established within the proposed plan are affordable rental and owner housing opportunities, home rehabilitation including energy efficient improvements, transportation opportunities to address homelessness prevention, and opportunities for children and youth. In your packet, you'll have a list of priority statements for the consolidated plan and a chart of activities proposed for 2020, most of which are similar to those in past years. In summarizing this, we will start with the 5-year plan priority statements. Affordable housing, rehabilitate or construct 10 units for rental housing, 35 units for home ownership, and an additional 5 units for home ownership through partnership with Legacy Habitat for Humanity or other qualified nonprofit. Support local agencies seeking to reduce the housing cost burden of low-income households through certificate and voucher programs. Homelessness. Support the continuation and expansion of emergency, transitional, and permanent supportive housing available to homeless persons in the community. Support initiatives, provide certificates of consistency for funding application, data collection efforts, and other technical support to service providers, expanding homeless prevention services, and coordinated assessment. Special needs population, support initiatives of service providers to expand services, outreach, and assessment for special needs populations through technical support, certificates of consistency for funding applications, and other means. Rehabilitate 10 affordable homes through the construction of accessibility ramps for households that have a disabled member. Provide temporary and portable accessibility ramps to 10 households that have a disabled household member. Some of the non-housing community development needs, partner to provide consumer financial education for 150 first-time home buyers. Partner to address the needs of children and youth from low to moderate income households by providing positive recreational and development opportunities. And partner to provide transportation to homeless and extremely low income individuals to access employment and training opportunities. The 2020 Action Plan summary of activities, one of the city's longest running programs, the Home Rehabilitation Loan Program. These are no interest loans that are repayable on sale. Loans range from $20,000 to $25,000. First come, first serve. We do have a waiting list, which typically is 6 to 12 months. Income limits apply. We are proposing 6 projects plus emergency repairs for 2020. I'd like to note that not only has this program contributed to much needed improvements in housing stock in Moorhead, but has also doubled the CDBG line of credit on an annual basis due to loan repayments of those through the years. The proposed budget for this activity is $205,650. Acquisition for accessible rental housing construction. Creative Care for Reaching Independence, or CCRI, will construct an affordable rental unit assisting disabled persons whose income falls below 80% of area median income. CDBG funds will be used to acquire a lot that will be used by CCRI to construct the unit. This will be provided on a deferred loan basis to CCRI, which accrues no interest and will be repaid upon sale. Proposed budget for this activity is $40,500. Acquisition for affordable housing, create homeownership opportunities through using CDBG funds to assist with acquisition costs related to purchasing Maple Court townhomes, which is a low-income housing tax credit development. Acquired units would be converted to affordable homeownership units. The proposed budget for the activity is $180,000. We are still in the process of vetting feasibility for this project. We included it in the plan so that we are prepared if you decide to move forward with it. Council will have the opportunity to review and approve that project. We're hoping in the first quarter of 2020. Accessibility improvements through Freedom Resource Center. The program constructs ramps and makes other home accessibility improvements. Income limits apply like the Home Rehab Loan Program. This one is grant-based, and the proposed budget for the activity is $7,400. After-school programming at Romke Park, delivered by Moorhead Parks and Recreation. This program keeps kids engaged and active, as well as offers snacks and homework help. Students are typically under 12 years old. Income limits apply, and at least 51% of participants must have income below 80% of area median income. The proposed budget for this activity is $6,200. Play Outside Daily, mobile recreation for youth, is delivered by the Boys and Girls Club of the Red River Valley. This program offers portable recreation opportunities in Queens, Bellesley, and Stonewall parks by means of their Play Outside Daily truck, which is staffed by recreation leaders and filled with play equipment. Income limits apply. Proposed budget for the activity is $7,200. Opportunities under transit. Delivered by Metro Area Transit. Program provides discounted bus passes for extremely low-income individuals who are seeking or going to work or attending workforce training. Income limits apply, 30% or less of area median income. Goal of 20 participants each year, primarily people who are homeless. The proposed budget for this activity is $4,200. Homebuyer education, offered by Lakes and Prairies Community Action Partnership. The core principle of this program includes home affordability, program mortgage qualification, incentives, maintenance, and homeowner responsibilities. Again, income limits apply. The proposed budget for this activity is $5,200. Youth program, delivered by Afro-American Development Association. This is would be a new subgrantee for us. Programming helps to shape a positive future for youth aged 14 to 24 through career exploration, mentoring, sports supportive services, and post-secondary admission application assistance. Again, income limits would apply, and proposed budget for this activity would be $6,200. Data collection initiative delivered by FM Coalition to End Homelessness. The goal is to improve data collection through software updates, staff training, and/or data entry. The data that is collected will serve as a resource for agencies in Moorhead addressing issues related to homelessness. Proposed budget for the activity is $10,400. Lastly, program administration, which includes program delivery, reporting, monitoring, and the Human Rights Commission. Proposed budget for administration is capped by HUD at $92,800. Program administration and public services have caps or limits that are based on the grant award that we get and the program income that we receive as well. Overall, the estimated budget for the CDBG program for 2020 is $586,375. Any significant fluctuations from this estimation will be addressed in a future plan amendment that would come before the council. A note regarding the budget, it's typical to have some carryover of unobligated funds at the year end. This year's carryover is a little more than usual because we had 2 large home rehab projects that were set to begin that were canceled by the homeowners for various reasons kind of late in the season. This summarizes the item covered by this public hearing. I'd like to open up for questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you tell me, this is for the program administration, it says $92,800, and that's out of the $580,000?
Yep, the $586,375.
Can you tell me where that goes? How that's determined? And I
Yes.
mean, that's like a, what, 1/7 of the total?
It seems
It's
pretty
a-
heavy.
It's a large.
It
Plus,
does.
there's also, throughout, it also adds additional admin charges, you know? It'd be like 400, 200 throughout the different programs.
Yep. Yep, program administration is, well, it's staff position salary. It is the reporting and monitoring that we do. HUD requires that we have a 5-year plan that we make up. HUD estimates that requires 200 hours to put together. That is program administration. Every annual plan we do is program administration. We have annual reporting that we do to HUD, so there's kind of a lot on that end. The way the amount is determined is HUD caps it at 15% of your award and program income. So it's determined by them. They set what the cap is, so that's what we list it at. It isn't always utilized to that amount. Also, what falls within program administration tends to be some other planning items. For instance, this year, as the council directed us to do the Maple Court Townhomes feasibility analysis, the capital needs assessment, the funding that is paying for that is through the program administration.
So then, where does your salary come from? Just from
Program
grants?
administration as well.
That's it. That's your salary.
Yes. Yep, a small percentage of my salary is covered by general when I'm working on some things outside of CDBG, but the vast majority of my time is working on the CDBG program.
Councilmember Watson.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks so much for the presentation, Josh. Great work on all of the outreach on that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I did just have a question, and if you don't have the answer right now, it's okay, but like on some of the outreach activities with youth, there was some requirements as far as 51%, the Play Outside Daily, for example, 51% of participants are from low or moderate income. I'm just curious how that data is collected, or
Sure.
how do they capture that information and verify, or?
No, it's an excellent question. Most of it is through self-certification with the households. The organization, the partnering organization, collects the registrant information. So whether it's the Rompke Park program where Moorhead Parks Department is running the program, or whether it's Boys and Girls Club, they have a registration form that the households have to fill out. As part of that, they certify what their income is, and we make sure that participation is 51% or more, those low-income households. And that's specifically why we target some of the parks that we do, because we know that we've got some households in that area that's a bigger percentage.
Yeah. So the mechanism is essentially like a liability waiver for use of the materials? I'm just trying to think. I've seen the pod out before, and I know they tally things and they're collecting information as far as use too.
No, just anybody who's signed up to be a part of that, their household
Okay.
has to fill out a registration
Okay.
form.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a quick question with the home rehabilitation loan program. It says 6 loans, emergency funds. What constitutes an emergency?
An emergency one, we'll have households that will contact us in the winter and say, my furnace went out, would I qualify for this? And in those cases, what we would do is we'd, check to make sure they fit the eligibility requirements of the program. And if it is an emergency, then we can bump them to the top of the list, and we can work with them outside of the 6 that we've designated.
Okay. But it's a fantastic program, and I appreciate the home buyer education too, because I think a lot of people want to buy homes in Moorhead, and that's a good first step in how to get on the road to financial success in buying that home. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Councilmember White?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question about the transportation vouchers. So we have, it's for people who are either homeless or extremely low income, and it's limited to only 2 months out of the year. Right, so you can only have 2 months out of the year, 4 months? In here, I think it says 2.
Does it? Well, that's an error then
That's
if it does. I
okay.
apologize.
I'll look it up here again. Up to 2 times per year, monthly bus passes, right? Yeah, so 2 months out of the year. Excuse me.
Where did you find that? I want to make that correction as we.
Okay. On 305, page 305.
Okay.
Sorry. My question is, so since we're looking at people who are heavily reliant on public transportation, 2 months just seems very limited. Is there any other opportunity for expanding it? Or if not, where would people turn to if they are they looking for vouchers to be able to get to work and they've already used up their 2 months limit or 4 months?
That's a good question. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. Being this has been here just over a year, I'm not sure historically how it was arrived, if they tried different variations. It is 4 months, so someone is allowed to get a voucher for 4 months. I believe the thought was that was enough time to get set up, to look for work, to find a job, and to be able to hopefully be bringing a steady income in. I think if there was a greater need or want to expand that, I think that's something we could consider and discuss. We have a very good partner with MapBus on this.
Councilmember White, Josh, actually, I was just going to clarify, it says up to 2 times per year per participant. So it doesn't need, which would be 2 months. So it doesn't need to be in a row though, correct? So if somebody needed help one month, that's the point of that. And then help, another month down the road, they could, right?
Correct, yes.
But you're saying it's 4?
It is 4.
Councilmember White, did he answer your question? Are you good?
I still, yes, well, just, I think I would love for us to look at ways of expanding that, because I just think, if somebody is, even, you're assuming that they're working on getting on their feet, but if you are in a low-wage job and you're reliant on public transportation, you may be working, but if you're relying on public transportation, even 4 months, it really isn't sufficient. And so just looking at other ways that we could provide those opportunities, or even if it's, not necessarily vouchers, but at a reduced rate that, I know that that's come up, and I know some of the other council members have talked about it, but that would be something, I think, really helping out those people who are on the margins and trying to make ends meet. If we could just provide access to transportation, then, that could make a huge difference. And I know from talking to the director, Pastor Sue at Churches United, that's an ongoing issue that they have there for folks is the lack of access to bus vouchers for transportation.
So bring about Councilmember Lindos.
Thank you, Mayor Judd. Josh, thank you for the presentation. I'm a big supporter of youth, and so one of the questions I have is, do you have any data about how well these, the Romkey Park, the Mobile Recreation Center, and now the new African American Development Association youth program, that one's new, so you probably don't have data on how many people are taking advantage of it, but the question is, the other two and other programs that you've run, are there waiting lists? Is there need for more support for those kind of programs?
As of right now, there aren't waiting lists. With the Play Outside Daily, the mobile recreation, anyone who wants to participate, it's available to them. No one's turned away from that. This year and last year, pretty consistently, it was 50 to 70 participants, which was very good, and many of those are returning daily. The after-school program at Romkey Park is 10 to 14 individuals participating in that. And again, some of them, it's multiple times weekly that they're there getting assistance with homework or just having a place to hang out kind of after school. So I'm not sure of the need for expanded. I know at Romkey, those numbers that's on the smaller end of what historically it has been. So we have had discussions on, are there other areas that we can provide this that might have greater need? So it's stuff we've considered and talked about.
So bring about any questions, Councilmember Carlson?
Just a few things. I wanted to clarify first, the first question asked by Councilmember Delquist, the salary, that also includes your benefits, correct?
Yes.
So it's not that you're getting paid $92,000?
No, certainly not, no.
If you were, you would be worth every penny. However,
Well, thank
that also includes your benefits. So just to clarify for the people at home that benefits are a significant portion of that. The second thing I was wondering too, if I agree with Councilmember White's assessment that there is a significant portion of our population, maybe not significant, but a portion of our population that does need this assistance. But I guess I would be reluctant to, if you're proposing to reduce other parts of CDBG, to increase that. And if that were the case, I think that your plan that you've come up with that kind of spreads the wealth around for all these needs in our community, when you're very limited and very specified with what you can do with that money through HUD, I guess I would be reluctant to propose moving the funding around. And then lastly, I just wanted to clarify with your program on the Play Outside daily, it says that it's 200 per program, and then if you do some of the basic math, I think it comes out to about 36 programs then throughout. And are those programmings just done during the summertime, or are some of them done during other months of the year to cover times when kids aren't in school, like during Christmas break, during the long Thanksgiving break? I'm just curious if that's just a summer
It is.
event,
It is
or-
just a
okay.
summer program. It's June, July, and August. We did discuss the potential for having that extend into September, maybe over weekends. And what we heard from our partner was that it's tough getting participation with school going on. So that's why we had limited it to the summer months. But I like the idea of holidays and some of those breaks, maybe looking in the future at some programming.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe with that many programs, that maybe there were some that were offered during times when kids would be at home for a significant portion of time. So thank you for clarifying that. I think it would be great to look into trying to move those programs around a little bit, just for something for kids to do, learn how to play outside in this wonderful snow that Mr. Moore and his crew gets to move around all winter long.
Does that open up any other questions or further discussion from the council? Okay. Seeing or hearing none, then I'll ask for anyone in the audience. Is there anyone present that wishes to be heard on this public hearing item? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard on this public hearing item? Hearing none, is there a motion to close our public hearing?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilmember Watson Curry. Seconded by Councilmember Seljevold. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. Then I think at 6:13, we can bounce back up to item number 5B, which is a truth in taxation public comment opportunity after the presentation of our proposed 2020 budget.
Good evening. Thank you, council, mayor, and citizens viewing from home. Tonight, we are going to give an overview of the proposed 2020 budget for fiscal year 2020. I might add, just to begin with, that there were information that went out from the county that suggested that this information was going to be presented on the 6th of December, which is this Friday. That was incorrect, and we were planning to do it today on the 2nd, but we will do it again on the 9th, and there will be a notice that will be going out from the county letting people know that that was their oversight and their error, and that we will they will be notified that it will be held again on the 9th. So we're doing it tonight on the 2nd, and we'll do it again next week on the 9th to make sure that everybody in the public has an opportunity to speak regarding the proposed budget.
And if I may, and I apologize, I didn't want to cut you off earlier, but Carla McCall, Finance Director, presenting tonight.
Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and go through some budget budget sheets here. The overall budget for the city for proposed budget in 2020, including operating and capital budget, is $115.4 million. This includes expenditures in 6 major categories for all funds. And again, the largest category is capital projects at $33.4 million, which is 29% of the overall budget. The second largest cost is personnel in the amount of $29.3 million, which is 25%. And this cost for the personnel is to allow full-time and part-time employees to help provide and deliver high-quality services. And again, this is the entire budget. This would be operations and capital expenditures. Revenue sources, this is how do we pay for these expenditures? You're going to see that the majority of the funding for city budget comes from sources that are other than taxes. Property taxes provide 14% of the total revenues. Charges for services are 23% of the total budget. And capital project financing makes up 28% of the total revenue. Now, this again includes all funds of the city, so that would include the enterprise funds as well, where charges for services or their fees that they charge for those utility services. The 2020 property tax overview, the tax capacity increase provided a growth rate of about 2.18% from previous year, 2019. The proposed increase in the tax levy for dollars would be $765,796, or 5.2% additional money over the 2019 levy. That then spread across a tax base is where we get to the tax rate increase of approximately 2.9%. And that would be the total need, those dollars divided by the total tax capacity, so the ability for those that are paying. So that's where we come to the 2.9%. And this chart shows that the average over the last 5 years, and then adding the 6th year in 2020, is about 3.03%. The tax levy, dollars collected in the tax levy itself, are split up by the need and distributed to various funds. So the general fund receives 61% of that tax levy revenue. The next highest would be debt service, which is the ability, we use those funds to pay for payments on your bonds that have been used for public improvements. That's 31%. There's a economic development abatement amount, it amounts to 1%. Some mass transit dollars of 1% in the library of 6%. Capital improvements. With the equipment and facilities this year for 2020, we were able to, $500,000 in the facility improvements was covered by proceeds from the sale of some properties in 2019. There were 2 properties that were sold that provided about $500,000 in revenue. So we're going to use those funds for some equipment and facility, mostly probably facility improvements. So the purchase and implementation of the financial and utility billing software, we're looking at that as a purchase. And the remaining equipment and facility improvements that are in the budget require no additional funding from the 2019 level. So basically, there's no additional funding here. We're using proceeds from sales, and then no additional funding is needed for these equipment and facility purchases based on use of that other cash from the sale of those properties. 2020 capital projects and purchases. Overall, there's about $33.2 billion that will be spent in capital projects. Now that includes your enterprise funds, your wastewater, stormwater, golf courses, public transit improvements. They are about $20.1 million. The biggest of that is that $19 million for sewer improvements. There's some brick sewer systems and some other important improvements with the facility, the treatment facility, that they're budgeting about $19 million for that project alone. So the additional projects in those enterprise funds brings that to $20.1 million. $2.9 million has been dedicated in the capital improvements for facilities, parks, trails, software, IT, fire equipment, and other improvements. Street improvement projects are earmarked for $8.7 million. And I believe at the next council meeting on the 9th, that you'll have a presentation from the engineering fund on what those projects entail, so you can see more about those improvements. And then about $1.5 million is for vehicles and equipment such as police patrol cars, dump trucks, mowers, bucket truck, pickup trucks, and snow removal equipment. That is the capital projects and purchases that are being budgeted for 2020. Changes in service and utility fees. As provided by MPS, they are looking at a 6% increase in their water rates for next year. A large portion of that, I believe, is for capital projects that they are looking at working on there next year. Wastewater, the rate increase is at 5% is proposed. And that also is a major improvement project that we mentioned just briefly a moment ago, that $19 million project. We need to increase rates to be able to afford that payment on that debt. And there's going to be rate increases in the next 2 years also under wastewater to be able to get up to a level that we can afford to make those repayment on the debt for this large $19 million project. Recycling fees, we just found out recently that there's some large increases in the costs for the city to dispose of recycling waste. So we are looking at a potential increase of $1 per month per account. And again, that's due to the increased cost to dispose of the materials. We're going to have a more in-depth presentation following this presentation regarding recycling and sanitation fees. Rental registration fees, we restructured those fees in current rates and based on what we see in other communities, and that's going to produce about an increase of $70,300. And then there's some park use and permit fees. Various park use and permit fees were increased slightly, and they're too numerous to really be able to tell you how much money that's going to equate to, but it's minimal. But there were some other permit fees that were increased. So talking about the general fund expenditures by department. So as you can see, police is 35%. On the left-hand side, you'll see a pie chart that represents how much you're paying for each one of those services. On the right-hand side, for every dollar we spend, 35 cents of that dollar is going to police services. And then the next highest is fire, at 16 cents of your dollar. Elected officials and administration, 15 cents. And then you have Parks and Recreation, 11 cents, Public Works, 10, Engineering, 9, and Planning and Neighborhood Services at 5. That's where the general fund uses tax dollars and where those monies go. So here's a chart with the actual dollars that we are spending in the general fund as expenditures. And of those dollars, you can see that personnel is makes up 68%. So you definitely know that the general fund is a service unit. We're providing services to the public, and to do that, we need people. People provide those services to the citizens. So that's our largest bulk for the general fund. And then 26% of it is other services and charges. Supplies, 5%. Some transfers out of 1, and then very minimal use of reserves. And it's budgeted use of reserves. So you see a change from 19 to 20 of $1,669,172. And what are the changes that you saw? In operating costs, we had an increase of legal fee costs. They were not budgeted in the past, but spent. So the budget is actually accounting for that now and putting in a budget instead of going back later and amending a budget is actually being budgeted as we see it being paid in total. So we had some increases also in motor fuels, and then increase in engineering for some pavement marking, a project that they're going to be working on to do a better, longer lasting marking of pavements. So you should see something there. Increase for lease of the law enforcement center by the PD. So the lease that we have with them has gone up slightly. And so that is part of the increase. Dispatch services to the Red River Regional Dispatch Center also increased slightly. And the library has also asked for an increase to cover their cost of living increases and such, a little less than 3%. So that was also an operating cost. Staff and benefit costs. There was a one-time health insurance rate decrease this year, so we were able to actually reduce what the city employer, as an employer, is contributing toward that health insurance for the employees. We're adding one full-time HR assistant, which was actually hired at the beginning of in 2019, and will continue as a full-time employee. A full-time grant and marketing position is added, and that will be partially offset with revenues from that grant writing perspective. We increased the overtime budgets for police and fire. We added an assistant city planner to begin employment on 2/1 of 2020 for community development and parks. And we're adding a compost attendant, of which 20% of that will come from the general fund, and the remainder will be paid from the enterprise funds. Other budget costs that were not included in operations or personnel would be the need for additional debt service to be levied or bonding for. Currently, we will have a new payment next year, so that is an increase to the debt service requirement. New comprehensive plan to be funded with reserves, which is intended, an intentional use of reserves for that. Consideration for annual shift of the HHIC expenses, which is the Yom Combs Center. We're going to add $100,000 for facilities long-term planning. We have a lot of old facilities, and we're looking at being able to plan for the different uses and how to deal with those facilities long-term. So we're putting aside some money to begin that planning process. We are going to put $200,000 aside for capital improvement fund as to build reserves and hopefully offset some of that debt requirement that we're bonding for at this point so we're going to start putting aside some into reserves to help offset the need to borrow. And we're going to set aside $50,000 to offset future increases in health insurance premiums. As we know, having a one-time decrease will probably result in an increase next year. So we're going to take part of that savings and apply it to future increases to keep that down to a minimum for our employees. Border cities legislation caps a property tax obligation at 1.6% of the taxable market value for commercial, industrial, and utility properties in the city of Moorhead. What that means is these properties only see a change in property tax if there is an increase or decrease in their market value. They are capped at 1.6% annually. That never changes. So they're only going to see more or less if their property values increase. So in this case, the disparity credit sets them at a maximum on $500,000 at 1.6 as a gross tax of $8,000. That's center column, but that's all inclusive of county, city, school, all taxes is $8,000. The city's share of the taxes this past year in 2019 was 34% of the whole tax bill that you see, which means that they would be capped at $2,720. And the remainder of that would need to come to the city would be coming from the state of Minnesota. They'll make up the difference in the disparity credit. So basically, what we are saying here is, irregardless of the tax rate for 19 and going up in 20, they are still set at the 1.6%. So there's not an increase that they should be seeing as far as commercial, industrial, or these other properties that qualify under this border cities legislation. However, our home values and our homeowners don't have that same disparity credit. So that these rates do make a change there. And if you see, our median home value in Moorhead is listed at $185,900. And there, if you have a homestead credit, you're going to see a $21,000 reduction, $21,886 reduction of that value. So your taxable value then would be $164,000. And that's why those who have homestead credits, you'll want to get that if you're living in your home so that you have that reduction. So, and then the class rate for homesteaded properties is 0.01, so that brings your tax capacity to $1,640. And then we apply the tax rate. And here I've just got the increase in the tax rate based on the 2.9%. Our tax rate would go up from current 2019 tax rate by the 0.012597, which would compute to an annual increase in their tax bill of $20.66. That's an annual, a year. Monthly increase, $1.72 for a home market medium home value of $185,900. So we show that again as a computation for a larger valued home. We chose $300,000 in this case to demonstrate that, again, there's a homestead credit, taxable market value is reduced, the class rate of 0.01, so your tax capacity is $2,898. The increase in the tax rate, when computed on your annual tax bill, would be about $36.50 for the annual increase, or $3.04 a month, based on this proposed 2.9% increase in tax rate. So the final 2020 operating and capital budget will be approved at the December 9th council meeting next Monday. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask now or contact the city manager or finance director at the city hall, and you can find those addresses simply on our website as well. So, are there any questions?
Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have 4 new positions. Do you know how much each of those positions are going to be?
Yes, the HR assistant, which we are currently have filled, is about $59,400.
Excuse me, Carla, that's with salary and benefits for an entire year, correct?
Yes, yes. The grant writing marketing position is estimated at $67,800. Assistant city planner position is estimated at $80,450. The compost attendant, the general fund portion, $17,300. Again, that's 20%, so the total position would be $86,500.
But that's from this fund.
The amount of 17.3 would be from the general fund, which has to deal with property tax. The rest would come from enterprise funds. That's correct.
Okay, and so I'm just wondering, we had a surprise come up with that we're going to find out later. And so is there any way that we can cut something from the budget in order to help the other thing that's coming up? Because we're going to have increase with the recycling thing that's coming up, that's going to be plus the 6% water, plus the 5% wastewater. And we're talking about, that's going to be a real increase on people on limited income. So I'm just wondering if we can cut something and maybe add it later, if we come up with something, or Because I'm just concerned that we keep adding things, but nothing gets taken away, and we just have the surprise that's coming up.
So, Mr. Mayor, council members, Councilmember Dahlquist, so the specific situation that we will be talking about has to do with the sanitation enterprise budget. It is not general fund budget, so they're two different things. The positions that Carla mentioned, one is being projected as half paid for from grant revenues, so that leaves only 2.5 really in the general fund, plus 20% of the compost position. The 17,000, I think, is general fund. The other 80% of that budget is going to be out of sanitation, the enterprise fund. So that is something to talk about, that 80% of that new compost position is being planned to be paid out of that fund we're going to have a problem with. So it's something to think about. We absolutely can do, they're completely two different funding sources, so we should talk about that. But so the homeowners with the property taxes versus, you know, renters and others with the utilities, and homeowners with the utilities. So I'm not exactly sure how that would work.
But I thought there was something recently where the city is going to be helping because we didn't know that some of the reserve had been taken, and so we're going to have to replace that somehow for the recycling, because that fund had been taken without someone keeping track of it. So
Right.
we're going to have that, and we're going to have to help somehow do that anyway,
That would come
right?
out of general fund reserves, so it would come out of the reserve balance that we have in general funds, and that will be the next item on the agenda, and that was just one suggestion, so we should probably talk through that before we circle back to this, which we can do.
I'm just trying to see if there's some way we can save money, being that it seems like there's going to be a lot, and then people in Moorhead are going to have to pay
Right.
to fix this. And so it's
The
gonna-
sanitation issue.
The
yeah.
sanitation and the water and the wastewater, their increases.
Those
you
are the
know.
fees, you're
That's
right.
right. So, and it's going to be more than the dollar is what we're finding out now for the recycling, correct?
No, the proposal is $1 increase in the recycling fee.
Okay.
And that would cover everything.
Okay.
And start building up reserves. It wouldn't be drawing any more from reserves.
But there is some way that we can budget this better before we finalize the budget.
Yes, we should talk about that with the next agenda item. You're right.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the other budget costs, we set aside $50,000 to offset future increase in health insurance premiums, and I know we got a decrease this year, but I imagine we're gonna have to go out with an RFP next year. How do we come up with $50,000? It's just
It was just a figure that really had it was pretty random. It was just a dollar amount that we felt comfortable would be nice to set aside. So we didn't have a formula or anything to that we felt 50,000 is a target number of any kind. We simply thought that it was a good sum to put away for future changes. So that's subject to discussion.
Councilmember Hendrickson, we've never had any savings accounts before for any of these items, so this was our first opportunity. We had just that little bit extra. We were able, to remind the council, you did a preliminary tax levy approval of 3%. We are down to 2.9% that we're proposing today. And then there was just that little bit of balancing at the end, and so we thought this was a good opportunity for this city to start building a little bit of savings in a couple areas. We have never been that planful before, been able to. So, and you certainly can make those if you don't want to start planning in that regard. That would be an option for cutting.
you know, I was just wondering, I think it's a good plan to have 50,000 for the offset, because you never know what health premium is going to do in the next 5 years. So I think it's a good plan to set aside at least 50,000, if we can afford it per year, just so we can offset those costs, because they're going to go up. I mean, not guaranteed, but I'm pretty sure they're going to go up over the years. So, I was just wondering where you got that figure, but yeah, that's a good thing to have that set aside. So thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember White.
Thank you for the presentation, Carla. I was wondering if we could go back to slide, and here at 17, the general fund expenditures. Oh.
This one,
No,
or-
that one.
There.
The big change, the one that, to me kind of stands out is the elected officials and administration. So could you just talk about, when we compare the 19 to 20 budgeted expenditures, can you talk about what that entails, that 857,012?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to give you real good detail, but of course I don't have that in front of me right now. But there's several most of these positions that I think we discussed are within administration, like the HR is in administration, and the grant writing position it's probably not in that figure, but, and then we had there was reorganizations that were done for wages that took place last year that are coming, into a full year worth of costs now. Otherwise, I would have to defer to maybe City Manager Volkers if she has some other information there.
Thanks, Carla. Councilmember White, we will add that to the presentation for next week so we can get the detail.
Great.
But specifically, this is off the top of my head, we have been paying for legal fees, all kinds of legal fees without budgeting them to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we just draw it down from reserves every year. So we are trying to get the budget. This has been a good opportunity with Carla coming in as a new finance director to kind of see where our holes are, and this is one area where we really should plan and have that. Another area was we did restructure last year. This is the first year. Not only brought the city prosecutor's office under the city, and that was a little bit of it, but we started the strategic planning, intergovernmental relations. We did a lot more legislative lobbying. As with a growing city, there's been growing resources and needs to support the city. So, but we will bring the detail, so we have that next week for you.
Can I just follow up with that? In regard to I was wondering if part of it was moving the prosecutor.
Part of it
office
was.
here. In which case, those were things that they were expenditures that we had in the past, but we were paying it to Clay County, so it's not
Exactly.
really as if we weren't spending that money. So
Yep.
some of it's not really new expenditures, it's just.
That's about a $500,000
Okay,
budget.
All right.
Councilmember Seljevold.
On the same slide, is there a easy explanation why parks is going down?
I do believe that the center, the sports center.
sports center.
The sports center has been turned over to school for operating now.
Okay.
So some of those costs have been reduced from the Parks and Recreation. And I think that would be the major difference here, but we can get that detail as well for you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank you, Carla, and the staff for a 2.9% tax increase. It's not zero, but it's good. So appreciate all the hard work. I appreciate the council working on this too. So it's a good year for the city. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, Carla, I know that we've gone over these numbers at several different meetings that we've had, and I'm not seeing that there's anything, like the positions and stuff, those are things that we had discussed before, so none of this, I'm failing to see what is new besides the recycling issue. Is there anything new that we haven't seen before? Okay.
The only thing
I just
that
wanted to
we
clarify.
had discussed but never really put firm numbers to were just to put some of this stuff aside in these reserve accounts. We discussed doing it, we just hadn't really set the dollar amounts, but knew that there was something that we could do. So those are more established now in this presentation. And then, yes, the one thing that was not preliminary discussed would be the issues with the recycling or sanitation rate increases. Those were not in the.
Because I do recall in our September meeting where we went over the cap, that a lot of those newer positions were things that were part of that presentation that we did go over already and preliminarily approved.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So bring about any other questions or comments? Well, Ms. McCall, I'll echo the sentiments of Councilmember Hendrickson. Thank you and Madam City Manager and your staff for a job well done. I feel like throughout this whole process, we've been kept informed. I think the ELT has done a great job Obviously, we do have a lot of needs. We are a growing city. We tried to, everybody came together, and, I mean, obviously, we have a lot more needs than what the 2.9%, is showing, but I think, to me, it seems like a pretty trim, fit budget, so thank you all for doing all the work that you've done on this.
Yes, and thank you, council, for working with us through this process, and we'll be back again next week to present it once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think at this point, since this is a hearing in which the public can have some comments, is there anyone here this evening that wishes to comment on the presentation regarding the 2020 proposed city budget? Hearing none, then again, thank you, Ms. McCall, for the presentation. And we'll move on to agenda item, I believe we're at number 10, for an update on the 2604 8th Avenue North land sale and related project. Is there anyone here to present on that?
Was I going to do this, Dan? Or were you? Christy? Oh, I don't see Christy here.
She was here.
Oh, did she leave? Can we go back to that?
That's fine. No, that's no worries. I wasn't sure. No worries. Then we can go on, I believe, to item number 14, which was pulled off consent agenda for a resolution to award bids for 2020 electrical materials. And I apologize if I don't have your name. I'm sorry.
Sure. Travis Schmidt, Electrical Engineering Manager for Moorhead Public Service. Mayor and council members, I'm here tonight to ask for your approval on the resolution to award the bid for 2020 electric materials. This is an annual item that we bring towards the council, or to the council every year. It's really in preparation for 2020 construction, and it's really just ordering the materials that we're going to need during the 2020 construction season. Majority of this is wire and transformers for this year's budget that we have in stock, or we get in stock for construction that we'll use during the 2020 construction season. Total bid price for the materials that we bid and opened those bids on October 31st was about $549,765. It's about 2.5% higher than our estimated costs, but within the normal range of what we were expecting. So, questions?
Okay. I'll open up for questions on this item. Councilmember Watson-Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for being here, Travis. I was just having a hard time making heads or tail of this bid process. This is quite a bit of technical language. I'm not too familiar with ordering up wires or transformers. I was curious if you could maybe walk us through kind of your guys' bid policy. Just visually, I had a hard time interpreting the graphs too. So if you could explain maybe your bid policy, and then I'm just kind of curious, are these materials replacing existing transformers and wires? Is this new construction? Can you give us a little bit of insight as to where these are plugging into?
Yep, so as we get further on in the year, September, October timeframe, my staff and I, we start looking at what's going to happen for the rest of the year, what projects are going to get pushed off to the next year, and what other projects we can do. A lot of those projects are, they're either based off of new developments, and right now I think there's 3 or 4 developments on the books that were supposed to happen this fall that got pushed to next spring just due to the wet season we had this fall. Along with that, we look at cable replacement projects or replacing existing infrastructure. And a lot of that is based off of age of the wire, type of wire, how many faults we've had or how many outages we've had in an area. And then we put together a plan to replace that equipment or that wire so that we can keep the keep the system as reliable as it currently is. So that's what we do. So then we go through, we fill out a list of all the items that we've currently got in inventory. We reduce down what we need based off of that, and then we put our list together of the amount of wire we plan to need. Along with that, we look at our transformers as well too, and what we have in stock, and then what we think we're going to need for the next year based off projects. And if there's something we are concerned about that we're a little low on, we'll order a couple extra just to make sure that if we do lose a transformer, they're long lead time equipment, and to be able to get that power back up and running to that service or that customer, we want to have that available for them right away. Then we go through the bidding process. We'll post that in mid-October, or advertise for the bid in mid-October. We'll award late October, early November, depending on the year, and then we take it to the commission for award, which happened back in late November, and now we're here tonight for award from you guys.
Thank you. I was just curious, is the policy then to award the lowest bidder for the materials?
For the most part, yes. I can explain that a little bit more. For the wire, yes, we always go with the lowest bidder. When it comes to the transformers, we look at the life cycle cost of the transformer, so we don't just look at the lowest price, we look at what it's going to cost us over the lifetime. Transformers have a loss portion to it, so over the lifetime of the transformer, there's losses, so we incorporate that into our evaluation of the bid. So we might not buy the lowest price transformer, but over the life of the transformer, it'll be the cheaper price for us.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you'd said that the transformers, there's a certain life expectancy. I know that with our Public Works Department and engineering, our departments will, and I don't know the terminology that they use, but they make sure that the oldest ones are being replaced, and there's a certain kind of cyclical manner to it. Do you have something like that in place for these transformers, so you know from year to year how many you guys are going to be replacing, so it's not an unexpected cost that arises?
Yeah, usually it depends on the projects that we're doing. If we're doing some cable replacement projects in older areas, we like to see 40 to 50 years on a transformer before we replace it. However, sometimes they start rusting out sooner than expected, so those have to get replaced sooner than we need to. However, we are looking at those. We assess them during our project review, and then we go through the process to change them out.
So you just change them as needed?
For the most part, yep. We try. I mean, they're going to last about 40 plus years, so it really depends on what they look like, and our crews are out checking that stuff all the time as they're working and things like that.
So has MPS ever considered doing, even if it's 40 years from now, it means 40 years from now, you might have 5, 6, 7, 8 years of constant replacement. So some might only be 20 years that you're going to have to get replaced in, or 10 years. Has MPS ever considered doing something like that so you can budget in a manner that is, there's no potential surprises?
We try to replace on an annual basis a certain amount, and it's not just, this isn't just going to last 40 years. We've got, I would say, probably in the tune of about 2,000 to 3,000 transformers out in use right now.
Okay. And then you had mentioned that, in 2020, you guys have a list of projects.
Yep.
Again, the city of Moorhead has different kind of red-rated facilities and red-rated projects. Do you guys have something like that you could bring to us so that we know that in 2020, these are the top 10 red-rated projects that you're going to be looking at, and these are kind of the yellow ones that you're looking at, the green ones? And
yep, usually what we'll do is we'll evaluate those, and then we take them to the Moorhead Public Service Commission for approval. Okay. And then what'll happen is then the award of the bid for those projects will come as well to you for approval.
Okay. Perhaps that's something that Bill, I see you sitting in the back row there. It's not church, you can come to the front. That's something that I would appreciate if you could supply to the mayor and the city council so that we know what the projects are that you guys are going to be working on in 2020.
Does that bring any questions or comments from anyone? Okay. All right. Thank you for being here, Mr. Schmidt. Really appreciate it. And I do believe this is an action item. So is there, and I guess just to note for those at home with the discussion, the financial considerations suggest that there is no cost to the city of Moorhead in taking this action item. So just so that we're all aware of that. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Hendrickson, seconded by Councilmember Seldervold. Is there any other further discussion on this item? Hearing on, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Then item number 10, we're going.
I'm happy to present
Okay.
it if you'll have me, Mayor and Council.
Mr. Molly, thank you
Yeah.
for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So tonight we're talking about a really exciting affordable housing project that has been approved by the council, or at least a resolution to approve the sale of land to a Commonwealth development company. They had applied for the low-income housing tax credits from the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, a very competitive process, and they were awarded the tax credits. So we've got this exciting project that we're going to be proceeding on at 2604 8th Avenue North. Originally, the property was purchased to construct a stormwater pond and some bike and pedestrian trails on the north side of Fargo. What is being proposed is a 3-story multifamily property that'll include 46 units, 4 of them for homeless populations, the other affordable towards low-income seniors and workforce families, a nice mix. They're looking to start solicitation for plans and bids in January. In June, commence construction and complete by May of 2021. The purchase price is $410,735 and will close on or before July 1st of 2020, or earlier if we can do it as well. One of the features I remember seeing that was part of this project, the site plan, was some landscaping and screening between the proposed parking and site and the Regal Estates mobile home park to the south. So, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I should add, this is meeting a need for affordable housing, which is determined in any number of local plans and studies over the years.
Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I did see there was a 2017 housing needs study. And of course, it's on here somewhere. Okay, and so housing needs, and it said 250 housing units, or this was the plan, would be needed for the 50% income, 50, or maybe I can just read it here. The study noted demand between 2016 to 2030 for 250 housing units earning no more than 50% area median income, and 682 housing units earned 50 to 80% of the area median income. And that's the 34,000, right? It's for Moorhead. So where are we on that? Do you know, since the 2017 study, and what our plan is? I mean, this is what, 60-some units, or?
Right. I don't have exact numbers in
But we
front of
need
me,
to
but
be
those would be.
better at that, don't we? We need
Here's,
to have
well,
more.
I will say that is part of what Josh presented today.
Right.
With the annual, the
Right.
5-year consolidated plan for housing and community development, and then they do an annual report, and then they put the annual plan
Right.
together as well. I can say, though, that, going forward, that the need for, listen, every county in the country is facing an affordable housing crisis. And one of the
Correct, right.
reasons is that, the population is getting older, and the cost to build is getting to be a lot more. And so these studies come out. I think the need regionally for affordable units is, in the next 5 years, is over 15,000 units. So, we can do what we can. The fact is that, with the low-income housing tax credit project, one of the reasons we didn't know this was happening is because we were waiting on an award from the state And so we can get back to you in 2 weeks as far as like
That would
how
be
many.
great. And
Now,
I'm also thinking about, even with the Maple homes, you know, it's going to be people that already live there will be able to purchase it. So it's not, we're not making more homes. I mean, it's helping those that will now be able to afford to buy their own home. But we're not getting more homes, more affordable homes. So I'd like to see us try and do more. I think this is great. I love this idea, and I would love for us to be able to do some more.
I should add, if you want to, there's this Commonwealth Development is constructing a property, the Artist Loft Flats, in downtown Fargo. If you drive by on about 4th Avenue, yep, that this company, they're newer to the area, out of Wisconsin, high quality development. So that will be, that is good. How to increase the inventory of local affordable housing is a challenge everywhere. It's exciting to see that we're doing it here. I should say, and maybe, I don't know, one of the things we can do as well is, you know, when Josh talked about the housing rehab program, preserving the affordable housing assets that we have as well. These are older affordable homes that we'll never build again. So making sure that we preserve the units that we do have is as, if not more important, just as important as adding new units.
Councilmember White.
Thank you, Dan. I just wanted you to expand on something you mentioned in terms of this developer. So not only high-quality homes, but they specialize in affordable housing, and so they're new to our area, but they've had projects all over the place that this is what they do, is work to put together housing that is in a more affordable range, right?
Yes, correct. My understanding is that's all that they do.
That they're just doing, right, but this is.
There is one.
Yeah, that's the one that he just mentioned, but before then, this would be their first project in Moorhead. Yeah.
I should say Barbara Simpson is in the audience. She could probably give us the best history on affordable housing in the region.
I just think it's great that there's going to be more units, and the other thing you need to watch for is that you don't lose any units, because there are some units that have, after they go for a certain period of time, like the Maple Townhomes, and I'm glad you're working on those, that they can sell those units, and the first option is usually to either a city or an HRA or something like that, and the Clay County HRA bought one a couple of years ago, a big unit, but yeah, that needs to be monitored too, because the ones that are lost are so hard to replace. But this is great.
And I think that's why I wanted to emphasize that, is we've talked about this with other apartment buildings that have gone up, and there hasn't really been that many developers who were interested in taking on something that focused on providing affordable housing. And so now that we have this opportunity, it'll be nice to continue to cultivate that relationship.
Councilmember Lindahl.
Thank you, Mayor. Dan, you might not be able to answer this question or not, or maybe it's already been considered, but is this on or close to a bus route existing?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Yeah,
can get back
I
to
was
you.
trying to look on Map Bus and stuff, and I couldn't tell.
It's 28th Street. Do you know, is there a route there?
Well, for the, I guess, clarification, I drive my kid sometimes on that road, and I see buses.
I'm thinking, to be
If it's
fair,
within
I
a
mean,
couple blocks.
it is within a couple blocks, because we know the bus goes to the
Right.
Cashwise, and
Yeah, in the Arbor Park.
Okay.
Does everyone have any other questions or comments?
thank you.
As always, thank you. Good
Appreciate that.
progress.
Thank you.
I believe then, for folks at home, it gets us to item number 15, which is a Public Works Department presentation of 2020 recycling agreement with Mancoda, brought to you by Mr. Seaman.
Good evening again, Mayor, City Council members. I'd first like to start by clarifying that I'm coming to you tonight to talk about a fee increase that's resulting from a contractual increase that we knew was coming, but we didn't have the numbers until recently. So we have been monitoring sanitation reserve budgets over several years, and we have been taking out of those reserves to continue to soften the blow on fee increases in the sanitation side of the house. And at this point, we're at the point where we need to make an adjustment, and I can no longer continue to soften the blow on those sanitation fees that we have had 0 increases in our garbage rate for 15 years roughly. And we wanted to let the new recycling program level out to see where we were going to be before we entertained any increases in the recycling fee. But this is strictly driven by the contract that we have to process this material, and I'll go into detail on why we're here today. To talk a little bit about this, I'd like to relate this real quickly to the strategic plan and go over some statistics just to paint the bigger picture of where we're at in municipal solid waste for some of the new council members. Discuss the current contract and the proposal for our 1 option year. The contract with Minn Kota, which is a 3-year with 2 option years, expires at the end of December. Talk about commodity markets, which is driving this, and the budget impacts associated with that, and make some recommendations for you to consider tonight. So in our strategic plan, this supports infrastructure and supporting environmental sustainability to benefit our economy and our community. And specifically, the objective is that we're trying to increase our diversion rate out of the landfill by 5% over the next 5 years, from 19% to 24%. So this is a graph of the last 10 years or so of municipal solid waste, and you can see as our population increases, so does our waste generation. And the interesting part is that you know, it's starting to, you can see it trending from 2015. The slope of that is increasing. So for whatever reason, we're generating more waste per household. So that is also driving our costs up. Here's where we're at. Good news is, start with some good news. Residential recycling program has been very successful. The bad news is the more you recycle, the more you have to pay for it. And it is right now, currently, about 2.5 times the cost to process recycling than it is to put it in a hole in the ground. And now I'll talk about how it's going to be even more than that. So and when we implemented our new program in 2017, we really increased from 500 tons annually to 2,500 tons. And so that's our stats in that box for 2018, and which is about an average. But this year in 2019, we're averaging about 186.9 tons per month on the residential, that's single family home, plus an additional 25.4 tons in the apartments. So what does that mean? We bring about 12% of our total tonnage comes out of the apartments. They constitute a third of our population. So we have some work to do there to increase that area. And then overall, we're seeing a 2% increase in 2019 of our tonnage than we did in 2018. So up from 208 to about 212.3 tons. So it's kind of where we're at. Collecting lots of stuff is the good news. Our current agreement, this next slide, kind of highlights what it is, and there's 2 facets to this slide. The first item is the no-sort processing, and that relates to all the curbside pickup that we do that's all combined in your blue tote. So currently we pay $95 a ton, and then those next 3 are related to source-separated recyclables, which is all the recyclables we collect at the drop sites, which are already separated by the customer. Every time we get a pickup, we pay Minn Kota $16 per site per pickup. If they come and pick up 3 cardboard containers, that's a $16 charge total. It's per stop. But it has to have a different truck for cardboard, then they got to send a different truck for plastic. Every commodity has a different truck because it's source separated. And then we have so we pay $30 a ton for source separated. So if we stayed with source separated, you're actually paying less than you are to put it in a landfill, which is currently $45 a ton, which will be $50 a ton on the 1st of January. Cost share, we get 50% of any commodity that is over $50 a ton of market value. And I'll talk a little bit more about how much money we've received the last couple of years in that payback. So the proposed price is an increase from $95 to $99.50 a ton plus a $30 offset fee. And that is because due to the commodity values being in the toilet. They need to increase their drop site pickup fees from $16 to $30 a pickup. That shouldn't say ton, that should say a pickup. And then they're increasing their source separated processing from $30 a ton to $30.50. That's a very small amount. But if we have to have them pick up anything on a Saturday, it's going to be $45 on Saturday. So that should also, that $45 should be per pickup, and that should be in that second item. So that's an error on that slide. So I apologize for that. They have increased our market share from 50 to 60%, but I'll show you in a graph that that doesn't equate to much. It doesn't equate to anything. So what is the delta of those? We're looking at a significant increase in to process our no-sort recycling. So that $30 per ton offset applies when the OCC, that's old corrugated cardboard, is less than $67.50 a ton. So that's going to be for the 6 months. So on the 30th of June, Minn Kota will look at the Chicago area market price for OCC, and if it's over $67.50, then that $30 goes away. If it's under, then that $30 offset fee will remain for the remainder of the 6 months. It's at 6-month increments. And right now, cardboard OCC is at $30 a ton. So that's what's happening. Why is the change? Why is this cost increase coming? Well, the commodity values, this is a 2-year trend, and you can see all the market values have declined. I won't go into detail on this chart. I'm just showing this for why we're seeing an increase in costs. This next chart kind of highlights, and it's broken down by commodity. This is industry average. So glass has a negative value. And why is there trash on there? Because statistically, 10% of your recyclables is garbage. And so that has to be paid for to be disposed of, and that cost is gone from minus $63 to $75. Good news is our reject rate in Moorhead's 8%, so it's lower than the country average. So that's a good testament to the recycling program and our citizens who recycle. So overall, commodity values, blended value has decreased by 47.5%. So you look at that chart too, and 87.5% of the tonnage collective since the change from 2017 to 2019 either has negative value or has decreased the most in value. So that's basically, it's not worth anything. A few components are worth something. PET, #1 plastic, continues to do okay. But that only constitute 4.5% of the total tonnage. So what have we received from cost sharing for our source separator over the last 4 years? That's it. So this year I've gotten $718.36 from cost share, and that's from just the source separated. There's 2 reasons why you see a decrease from 2017 to 2019. In 2017, we implemented our no-sort recycling program, so drop site tonnages went down significantly because people are now putting it together in their blue tote rather than going and taking it and separating it themselves. And I have some data on the tonnage. And also commodity value is decreased. So those 2 factors have really eliminated any cost share revenue that we're getting. But even at its high point in 2017, when we got checks for $20,000 out of a $650,000 enterprise fund, $20,000 is good, but it doesn't pay for your services. There's a lot of people that think that you make money on recycling. Even when the market was good, you still don't make enough to cover your costs, even remotely. This is the OCC trend line for the last 20 years. And I only put this in here because if you look at that peak under January, or right in the middle of where 2017 and 2018 are, the OCC price was about $163.50. That was 1 July 2017, the exact same day that we implemented no-sort recycling. And then look what happened after the 1st of July to the OCC price, market price till today. Went from $163.50 to $30 a ton. So that's a huge decrease in revenue generating for not only for the processors, but, for Minn Kota, who's the middle person, taking our material down. It also causes hardship down at DEMCON, Republic, those MRFs, material recovery facilities that are processing this, because now they have to charge tipping fees to cover all their costs because they're not making any, there's zero commodity value or very little commodity value. So now they've raised their processing prices so they can remain to operate in the black, and then once the market recovers, then that's all gonna go to the profit side of the house. Where they used to rely on profits and commodity sales to pad their processing, to keep their processing fees down. But now that that revenue is gone, they have to raise their processing fees. So everybody's raising their prices. No-sort recycling, here's what's happened since implementation. We used to collect around 900, 1,000 tons source-separated, high-quality product, and it's gone to date in 2019 about 230 tons. So that's that stuff that generates revenue. So that's another reason why we've only collected $700 for our cost sharing, because we've only collected 231 tons source separated. That's part of that cost sharing program. So budget impacts. We have a couple of things going on. The last couple of years, we've been taken out of reserve to cover our processing costs for no-sort recycling. The budget was built on an estimate of about 1,700 to 1,800 tons annually, and our first year we collected 2,500 tons. So that's 800 to 800 additional tons at $100 a ton processing. So that's $80,000. So we've been covering that just because we just wanted to see what was going to happen and see if, before we had to go back. What you don't want to do is implement a new program and then the very next year you have to say, oh wait, you guys are great job everybody, you're collecting lots of tonnage, but that means I need more money. We didn't want to do that. So we've been covering that with our reserves. But the main driver for this, again, is that processing fee increase in the new contract. So to cover the existing fee shortfall in 2018 and again in 2019, we have to pull about $7,000 out of the sanitation reserves to cover the processing fees. And I just explained that's because we were collecting and our program has been so successful. We used the sanitation reserves in 2018 to balance the budget, and we're going to have to use it again in 2019. So I'll be coming to you to talk about the need to transfer some more reserves to balance the sanitation budget when I get the final numbers in at the end of this year. So what does this mean for us? So the new contract, when I talked about drop site pickups, that fee went from $16 to $30. I went and calculated on average what we pay, how many pickups does Minn Kota do for us on an average year? It's about 1,360 pickups, give or take a couple. And so that's going to generate, instead of $22,000, it's now going to cost me $40,000. So that's an increase of $19,000 for those pickup fees. Additionally, the processing fee for the first 6 months at least is going to go from $95 a ton to $139.50, and that generates based on an estimated annual curbside tonnage of 2,500, an additional $86,000. So you're going to need roughly $100,000 to cover the increase in processing costs. What does that equate to in dollars? To fund that previous shortfall, it's about 35 cents a month per household. To cover the contract cost, it's another 53 cents. The packet I gave you originally had some operational cost increase. We took that out. We'll work that for next year, and then we'll see if we can find some efficiencies there. So the recommended total increase, if we keep the program the way it is now, to put us back in the black where I'm not pulling out of reserves any longer, is a required increase of 88 cents per month per household for recycling. So the city manager asked me to go and provide a few options. So one of the things we could do is eliminate glass from the recycling stream. Why? It's heavy, and you have to pay somebody $12.50 a ton to get rid of it. So it's got negative value. We pull that out, put it in garbage, take it to landfill. So that'll reduce, and these are all estimates, so since it comprises 14% of our total weight that's collected in Moorhead, we could potentially eliminate, or not eliminate, but transfer 270 tons of recycling over to the landfill. But you got to factor in, not everybody's going to follow that rule, right? So 80% compliance, and honestly, I just pulled that, yes.
Is Minn Kota still going to be accepting and processing glass? I'm just curious how that fits into the
No,
equation.
if we took it out of the stream, we would not.
But I
Or-
mean, is Minn Kota offering that service for other communities if you go to them, or are other?
Yes, I'm sure they are. This is
Okay.
purely driven on our side, not Minn Kota's side.
I understand, I just wanted to clarify.
Yes,
Thank
yep,
you.
certainly. So factoring an 80% compliance rate in, we have a potential to reduce 215 tons, which equates at that 139.50 a savings of $70,000. So we can go from $105,000 to $70,000, and that would still require a total increase of 71 cents per household per month if we remove glass out of the recycling stream, which is 14 cents cheaper than if we keep glass in the stream. Third option, increase the fee just to $4 a month and use sanitation reserves, and then do another increase in 2021. Kind of spread it out a little bit. So if we do that, and I increase it to $4 a month, I'm going to generate a $94,000 shortfall in 2020, which will have to come out of the reserves. So here's the picture of where we're at with the reserves. So in 2016, we were healthy, and it dropped significantly in 2017, but that's when we implemented our new program, and I had to pull roughly 1.2 million out of reserves to pay for our new program. We had to purchase $800,000 in totes, a new rear loader, and a new auto loader. So that's what it cost to implement. We did receive a $250,000 grant from the MPCA, which helped keep the cost down, but it was still a significant investment. So even though we dropped under that 25% reserve line, I wanted to see where we were going to trend in 2018. And so we were still okay in 18. But in 19, we got hit with landfill increases and some pricing structure changes at the landfill that impacted our roll-off market. And so we had to absorb a increase from $42 a ton to $45 a ton in the landfill. So we took some of that out of, we had to balance the budget. And then we had some processing fee on both the garbage side, landfill side, and the recycling side that we had shortfalls for. And so we had to take money out of the reserves. That's why it dropped down in 2019 to $751,000. The projected 2020 numbers includes roughly $300,000 shortfall in sanitation for this year. And that's due to, again, processing fee, underfunding processing fees, fuel, motor fuels, as well as some increased costs in machinery and equipment repair. And then the projected 2021 just includes that if we would spread that cost increase out and take that $94,000 hit that was briefed in the previous slide, then we'd be down to $337,000. So I wanted to paint the picture where we're at. So none of the proposed pricing structures will help turn around the reserve account. We're going to have to talk about that in the 2021 budget build when we talk about garbage rates, because that's where most of our revenue, since we haven't had that increase, we're going to have to talk about that in the future. But for today, we have 4 options for recycling. That option is keep program as is and increase from $359 to $447. Remove glass, increase $359 to $433. Raise it just to $4 and continue cutting out or pulling out of reserves. We will still have to have a future rate in 2021 so we can balance the recycling budget. And then option 4, which I just threw in here, and we can discuss other options as well, is to raise the rate for 6 months, and then when we look to see what happens in the OCC market, if we drop that offset fee, then we could take and reduce our recycling fee rate. But when markets fluctuate like they are, my preference would be not to lower the fee because we have to continue to account for those times when we have to pay the offset fee and when we don't, and have more consistent fee structure. So it's a lot of information, but I'll open it now for discussion.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Moore, how many years out are we looking at OCC coming back?
I
Couldn't
I
even
don't
make
know.
couldn't even make a ballpark or anything?
don't have the latest on that. I can talk to Minn Kota to see what they think is going to happen, but it's really hard to predict.
And last time I did a little research on it and talked to the representative from Minn Kota, it was at least 2 to 3 years out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these prices have, since China stopped taking our material, that's really when it hit. So unless the industry's looking for other markets, which I'm assuming they are, then we'll have to see.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple questions. We had a sustainability meeting, was it a couple weeks ago, and we discussed that getting children involved in the schools, somehow educating them, where we could actually reduce the garbage and recycling if we became much more aware of how we are purchasing things. And I was really impressed that you said that it's just 8% that's not doing it. And also, the other question is, what if we went back to the sorting? I know that pickup is a pain, but I mean, would that, because it'd be more pure, would that be better?
It's certainly an option, but it would be, a lot of cities are doing a lot of things. Some cities are canceling their programs altogether because they can't afford it.
So could we go just to garbage and then people would have to do their own recycling?
Yeah, but I think what would happen is, and it's my theory on Americans, is that if it's not easy, we're not going to do it. I mean, that's why our no sort program was so successful, because now my 9-year-old daughter does it instead of me. That's her job, and she just has to dump it in one container. So I think if we went backwards, that we would lose, it would just, or we just, I can't predict what people are going to do, but that would be a drastic step to just stop recycling and then have them.
What if that was possible, though, that our garbage and recycling would go down just because people voluntarily did it, and so the cost would actually go down? Is that, if that were done, then could the rates decrease?
We're not at the point where rates would not decrease. Well, if you go back to my first slide, we generate 3,200, roughly 33,000 tons of municipal solid waste. So 33,000 tons, and of that number, 2,500 tons is your classic recycling number. So let's say we.
But if it did reduce, you would actually have more income than would go out. If, just best case scenario.
Theoretically, but.
If I may interject, here's my thought, just to take it under consideration. I mean, when and this is nothing against the presentation, because you always do excellent ones. I came in tonight thinking that we had a decision between option 1 and 2. Now we have 3 and 4. And maybe for the sake of time and efficiency, I guess we can continue to ask questions, but my thought is now I wouldn't mind having some more time to research 3 and 4 to see what the impacts are. And maybe we can have those, unless there has to be a decision made tonight, City Manager Holkers.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to suggest exactly that. We've thrown an awful lot of information to you the last week, because we just got the information. And you do have I think asking questions is great. You should try to get all the questions answered that you can, but I would like to suggest we put it on next week's agenda for consideration of all the information that you're getting and the possible alternatives. Steve also said maybe there's some other version of this that we're not presenting to you. We need your best knowledge and input into this. Steve, it would be okay to postpone the decision, right, until next week?
Yeah, our contract expires at the end of the month, so.
That's right.
Yep.
With that, I think Councilmember Carlson wishes to say something. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like the mayor, I was coming to the meeting thinking we just had option 1 and 2. Personally, I like option number 4, to raise it just for a very, very short amount of time and reassess, because of the fact that Concordia College was awarded a Bush grant, a Bush Resiliency Grant. And one of the subcommittees that they have is the ecosystem services, and perhaps that working group could provide us some really good insight for the first 6 months of 2020, with a lot of individuals working on this specifically, to give us some insight. I think that the program was very successful. I would hate for us to go backwards and not recycle. The fact that the budget was originally for 1,700 tons and it was actually 2,500 tons really shows that our citizens want to be gentle to our to our earth by the fact that they're recycling that much. I think that it would be very detrimental in many ways to go back, and maybe there's just some other ways that this working group could provide us with some insight. So that would be my suggestion.
Councilmember White?
I have a couple of comments. First, though, I think, Steve, aren't you on that subcommittee for the?
I'm on the infrastructure subcommittee.
Yeah.
So it's kind of related because we'll talk composting, things like that, but yes.
Yeah. And I agree with Councilmember Carlson. I don't think we should back away from recycling, but I just wanted to touch on Councilmember Dahlquist's comments too, is that, I think looking at some of the challenges with the cost of recycling, and I think that this shift in the market is really just illustrated that it was kind of a wake-up call for people in the U.S., because I think we had this false assumption that, hey, we're doing all this recycling and it's, it's all going away or being reused for things and, great for the environment. And really what we were doing was just shifting it overseas, and now that market has collapsed. And so I think you're right, we should narrow it for now, our discussion, but in the long term, it's a good time for us to have a bigger discussion with our citizens about why it is important that we look at not just recycling, but how do we reduce our consumption and, the things that we purchase that, whether it's recyclable or whether it's going in the landfill, it's still more stuff. And the work that we could do to try to reduce that would benefit not just in terms of the environment, but the cost for our community too.
Councilmember Lindas?
So I agree with Councilmember White and Dahlquist. I also really like Councilmember Carlson's suggestion, and I'd go one step further, potentially even this week, roughly an environmental impact. You did a great job giving us kind of an economic impact, and I like option 2, mainly because when I think about glass, it's an inert substance. Going into the landfill really is not going to do anything bad to us, but I don't want plastics in my environment anymore. So is encouraging the recycling of plastics and finding ways to get those out would be fantastic. But I don't know if there's a possibility to kind of also add a column of, essentially we're trying to do good to the earth and to our environment that we live in and our children play in here. And so glass to me doesn't raise any problems diverting that to the landfill.
And a lot of it's now being used as daily cover in a landfill.
Right.
Even though it's, entered into the recycling area, a lot of it's crushed and ends up as daily cover in the landfill.
And you can mix it with asphalt and use it for,
Yes.
making better
Yep.
potholes.
Yep.
Covers. Bottle covers.
Yes, we fill potholes.
Councilmember Seljevold?
Steve, did you say it's $45 a ton for the landfill?
It is until, and then it goes up to $50 a ton on January 1st.
Well, I mean, it's tied, because it ties into your budget. Are we putting a lot in there that we could take out? I mean, is it grass clippings? Is it things that are, you know,
No.
could go into a compost or not?
No, that's a good point. So that data is strictly your classic recyclable material. So composting is separate stream. So, you know, although we do find some grass clippings here and there in recycling totes, usually it's not a.
But
not
I mean,
where it's
just
going.
with the landfill.
Yep.
I mean, if we were to cut down, I mean, are we wiser in our sorting? Like, I don't compost, and I said I would like to. I mean, that would cut down my garbage.
Oh, you mean organic composting,
Organic, yeah,
food waste? Yeah.
And so, I mean, would that be cut the tonnage that's going in the landfill that we have to pay $45 or $50 a ton? Is
It
that-
would be, yes, if folks did their own composting at
Right.
home. Yep, it
Right.
would.
So, I mean, I'm just, that's all total, that part of your total budget. If we were to save money there,
Yes.
Okay.
The less that we put in there, the, our disposal costs will go down.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
That bring any other questions or comments? Councilmember Watson Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Steve, for the dreary information. I had kind of just a logistical question. And there's a lot of options in the mix too, but of course, we have labels on our single sort recycling bins that are at all households. And it's probably changed what they've accepted, honestly, since we've initially put that on there. But if we were drastically changing what was being accepted, is that something, would we have a plan or to notify residents? I know we do the mailer that has the do's and don'ts for recycling.
Yeah, we would change that, and we would do probably something where we'd put it in the MPS bill.
Okay. Was there ever any, I don't recall, I just wanted to see, was there ever a conversation if we drastically change things that we would also change this, like the decaling on the bin? That seems like a logistical nightmare, but.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't, because we probably have 12,000 totes in the
Yeah.
system, and it would be pretty costly.
Okay.
But yeah, that we had wrestled whether we wanted to put that on the lid or not, just in case, just for that very reason, but.
Yeah, I recall that.
Yeah. But that is certainly something to consider.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify something you said at the very beginning, that the increase in recycling hasn't gone up for 15 years. Is that
For our
15?
garbage rates, roughly 15 years, between 12 and 15. Yeah, our garbage rates have been stagnant.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And I would like to say looked for efficiencies in our operations. We reduced our apartment collection from 3 days a week to 2. We shifted from Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to Tuesdays and Thursdays. So now I'm only running apartments twice a week. So we're, looking for operational cost savings all the time and efficiencies. But this increase of this magnitude is just too big to absorb.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any way we can gauge the public's opinion on this? And I know Councilmember White said we could reach out, but I mean, we have less than a month. Because, with that option for 6 months, and we can gauge the public opinion.
Yeah,
Because sorry, Steve, go ahead.
We probably wouldn't have enough time to get any feedback before the end of the month. But if we wanted to go that option and do it for 6 months and then do a poll to see, how it's going and whether folks want to look at different alternatives.
Or if they want to, live with the rate raise. When I was campaigning last year with the no-sort recycling, to me, the residents didn't want to get rid of it no matter what. So I think that's probably the majority of the public opinion. So I think if we gauge the public and ask them, there's going to be a fee raise or rate raise, how do you feel about that? It's, something like that, just to gauge. And I think you'd probably have a pretty positive, public sentiment about that, so.
And I didn't talk about long-term. If we get the transfer station, then we will have the ability to collect and have some other options for processing. So, you know, and Minn Kota's been a great partner, and they got, you know, they have to do what they have to do for their business plan and business model and to make it balance and run in the black. But if we build a transfer station, then we'll have some options, whether we ship ourselves and see what those economics look like and the logistics look like of shipping directly to Republic or Demcon or somewhere else, you know, and taking that part and delivering that rather than working through a second party. So long-term, we'll have some other options, but, you know, as you know, even if we get it this year, we're talking next year and 2022, by the time we'd probably change a business model.
I don't know if you've heard, but I'm in full support of that transfer station, so thank you.
Yes, and we appreciate your continued support, but
Any other comments or questions? Councilmember White.
I just have one last question. So when we look at the increased tonnage, you know, you have one of the graphs shows just overall everything in recyclables as well as what goes into the landfill. Have we looked at how that compares to our population increase? Because I'm just wondering, as we, you know, obviously we've got more and more garbage. Is it just a reflection of our increase in population? So we've got more people, more garbage, or is it at a higher rate? And I know, obviously, one of the things that you've been highlighting is that we have an issue with we have more apartment dwellers, that they tend to recycle less. We have more going into the landfill, but just overall, have we looked at that to what extent is this a reflection of just our population increase too?
yeah, it is. I haven't looked at it in depth, but over, you know, the last few years, we've increased our multifamily housing numbers greatly, and yeah, they tend to generate more garbage per household. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it's what we're seeing. And then, yeah, with that 12% of our total tonnage coming from apartments, they're on the low side. And again, it's because of convenience. It's much more convenient for me from Cassidy to take it in the garage and be nice and warm all winter and dump it in my tote. Some folks have to walk a considerable amount of distance at their apartment complex for recycling. So.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the fact that you brought up the transfer station could have a impact on the recycling program, and given the fact that it's our #1 legislative priority, then it even makes me more, I don't know the word I'm looking for, liking option number 4, because of the fact it gives us some time and we would actually know what the legislature awards us if they do, when they do. And even if we are awarded the money for the transfer station, although that would take a couple of years, at least we would have a finite amount of time that we would have to look at. Additionally, the fact that rates haven't been risen in 15 years also makes me think that option number 4 would be a great resolution at this point.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, hearing on, since this is an action item, Madam City Manager, so should we just table this item until, thank you, Councilmember Lindas. Second. Motion to table, second by Councilmember Hendrickson. Any further, oh, sorry. There is further discussion because Ms. Quindlen, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Quinn.
Overland would like to be heard on this. Madam City Clerk, if you could set 3 minutes on the timer, appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Quindlen Overland. I live at 1305 14th Street North. As a resident, my preferred option would probably be either removing the glass, so option 2, or option 4. But I was wondering if we ever looked into, I know this sounds terrible, but charging for removing garbage. So each garbage bag costs X amount of money, and you have to put a sticker on the garbage. Because what we're looking at now is I would much prefer residents see a lower amount on their recycling, like what recycling costs them, and then a higher amount for what garbage costs them. Because I want to encourage my fellow residents to continue recycling and to recycle more, because we really, it's kind of a climate emergency where we are right now. So if we had everybody, like, I personally throw away an unfortunate amount of garbage. Just my cats eat everything and then it ends up in the garbage. And I just don't have the incentive to recycle. But if I had to pay like 10 cents a garbage bag with a giant yellow sticker on it to go into the garbage, or I get fined, I think that would encourage me to process that recycling more and to compost more and to not use as much garbage. So I was just wondering if that would be potentially an option for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Overland. So we have a motion to table that has been, oh wait, is there a comment regarding Ms. Overland's comment?
I don't know if I'm allowed to.
Hey,
I can.
you are.
What's his table?
So
Yeah.
we'll go
I don't
to,
think
Yeah,
I
I
can.
don't think we can comment on a table.
Yeah, it's a motion to
Correct.
table, it's non-debatable.
that's what I thought. So with that being said, there's a motion to table and a second to table the motion. Any further discussion? Well, we can't discuss because now we're going to move forward to the vote, which is, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. So that moves us to item number 16, which was pulled off consent. A resolution to designate the 2020 election polling locations.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, this was pulled from consent, I think just to draw attention to the fact that although we are not required to do this every year, there's no law or requirement to do it, to note the polling locations every year unless there's a change. We want to make sure that the public, we made that change and it was confusing a couple of years ago, so we want to make sure that the public is very well aware of where the polling locations would be for 2020, for the 2020 election. And the proposal is to keep them the same as they were in 2019. There will be possible redistricting after the census, so there will probably be changes needed at that time, but for right now, city staff and the city clerk is suggesting that we keep the polling locations the same. And you have a draft resolution before you on that.
Does that bring up any questions or comments? The only question I have is, make sure my mic is on, if there are going to be any suggested changes, how far out in advance would the citizens or us know so that we can accommodate?
We would have to bring it to the council the year before December 31st of the year prior, so you would have, everybody would have plenty of notice.
Well, they'd have this meeting,
Yep.
meeting or next meeting.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure, okay, and then we're all set. Does that bring up any questions or comments? Councilmember Watson Curry?
Thank you. Just a comment, I did request to pull this off of consent, and I know I'd kind of like to see a culture shift within the city. Just, I think it's really important that we talk about this annually, and I don't have any problems with the locations, and I just think it's really important for us to have that transparency with the community as far as how far in advance we have to secure the locations, the requirements. I don't know if Madam Clerk wants to speak to it at all, but there are requirements as far as accessibility and within the space too. So there's quite a bit of logistics to go on behind it. So I appreciate that we have it organized and just wanted to make sure that it's in the public eye. So I don't know if you want to say anything about the logistics or the requirement processes for reserving these spaces at all, just to educate people. It's a really important function of our city.
Yeah, I think that, yes, speaking of the logistics, there are a lot of rules and regulations, and trying to get these polling locations locked down this coming year in 2020, we actually have 3 elections, the first one being in March. So logistically, yes, to keep these all the same, it makes it much easier for me.
Go ahead, Steve. JJ stepped out, so.
Thank you. So I guess one of the questions I have is that Precinct 9 is currently Triumph Brethren Lutheran Church, and it used to be quite a few years back Christ the King, which is actually close to Precinct 9. You don't have to cross the freeway, and I don't know if there was ever any consideration to move it back to Christ the King, so that it would be within easy walking distance of people in Precinct 9.
I guess I would defer, I know that the change sort of happened prior to me coming to the city,
Yeah.
so I guess I would refer to city manager on that one.
You know, Councilmember Lindos, I do not remember why she changed this one specifically. Do you happen to know, Dan? I don't recall the reason for this change, so we could make the change. That's the only thing it might have been is accessibility. There was a reason, gosh, it was years ago. Christ the King versus Triumph.
But then Christ the King rebuilt stuff, so it should be accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it was an access issue.
It was ADA
Yeah, it was
compliance.
for ADA issues.
You think we could find that out before the next meeting?
Sure.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Councilmember White?
Thank you. Actually, I'll just mention the one that comes up a lot when I'm talking with citizens on the north end of my ward is the fact that, we have Ward 3 is a very long ward, and all but one of the polling places is south of I-94, and the only one that is north of it is the Concordia student one. And so I know there is no opportunity to walk to a polling place, and I know that had changed, but I don't hear a lot of complaints, but I just know that people do bring it up, that it's, for elderly, it's a bit of an inconvenience and things. So maybe something to think of for the future is that is there effort to try to spread things out so that things are fairly close to the people where they're voting?
Yeah, Councilmember White, that one we did really do a lot of work on trying to find a location that was north of 94, and that was the only feasible location given all the parameters and requirements. And we can if someone has another idea, we spent an awful lot of time trying to find that one. So I don't know that there is another location available, or even with that meets all the requirements. But I can give you that information, and maybe you have a different idea. We did a lot of research on that one.
Well, and one of the questions that people ask, and I don't know the answer, is because so for instance, where I live, we used to vote at Trinity, even though that's actually not in Ward 3. So is it that you have to vote in a building that is in your ward, or could it be something that's closer but doesn't happen to be in the ward?
Yeah, it does have to be in the ward.
It does have to be in the ward.
So that's why.
That's why Christ the King is not.
Yeah, Christ King's in Ward 2.
It's across the street.
Interesting.
But I have voted there before.
Yeah, we used to vote there.
Yeah.
Wasn't the Congregational Church one of the polling places previously?
Also
The one
in
on
Ward
8th
1.
Street?
Yeah, so both,
Yeah, they're both in Ward 1.
Yeah, so both of the previous polling places that we voted in were actually in a different ward, so, yeah.
So given the fact that apparently a lot of these questions have been resolved, that the potentials of other options are not in the wards that the council members are requesting, I would move to accept the polling sites as prescribed on the council agenda.
I second it.
Motion was made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Lindos. Any further discussion on this item? Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. So if we were to change a polling location, it would have to be next week?
Yes.
Thank you.
Does that bring up any other comments or questions? Okay.
You wanted to double check?
All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That moves us to item number 20 for those at home, mayor and council reports. Any reports
I have some.
from council members? Councilmember White?
I have two items I wanted to bring up. One is that next week at our council meeting, we'll be giving out the awards for this year's human rights. We'll be giving out this year's Human Rights Awards. So we have 3 folks, and we haven't publicly announced it, so I'm not going to tell you who the recipients are, but it will be a reception at 5 o'clock in the atrium. And so I wanted to strongly encourage you, my fellow council members and city staff, to join as we celebrate with the folks, and then we'll be giving out the awards here at the council meeting at 5:30. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that tomorrow at our Moorhead Public Service Commission meeting, They will be presenting the report on the strategic direction for customer service. And I know that that was something that's come up in some conversations here with council. And actually, MPS General Manager Bill Schwant mentioned this, that council members could come to the meeting tomorrow. You're encouraged to, you always have the opportunity to come to that. Or he would also be willing to come back and talk to us about that as well.
Thank you, Councilmember White. And I also want to make sure that's at 5 o'clock in the atrium.
Yes, next
Okay,
week,
I just wanna make sure I
5
got it.
o'clock next Monday in the atrium.
So I'll make sure I got it on my calendar.
Yeah.
Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an update from the Park Board. I'm not going to go over any of the information about the natural play area. I think we covered that, but I would encourage people to watch the video on the Rotary webpage. Just another shout out and thank you to Lowe's for their $2,500 donation on redoing the gooseberry maze. That was a real fantastic donation, and they had a lot of fun, and it looks really good. Also, Park Director Holly Heidkamp talked about at the Cullen Center, the city is going to be able to utilize the third ice area for dry floor programs, and they're looking at different types of events that could be held there. A couple of the options, not saying that these will happen, just some things that are being discussed is possibly pickleball, Bounce-A-Palooza, and even possibly a community rummage sale. So just some options that people are thinking about. I don't know. I don't know what Bounce-A-Palooza, I think it's with the bouncy houses. I believe that's with the bouncy houses. Possibly, maybe I would, if that is something that would happen, I would also propose a dunk tank, because I know that our mayor did a great job with that at the Veterans, the VFW in North Moorhead earlier this year. An update from the Laura Board and the Library Board. The new cameras that were purchased for the library are working really, really well, and they are very appreciative of them. Also, the Laura Board passed a new policy that will be affecting the Moorhead Library, and they added that individuals who have alcohol or possess alcohol or drugs or are exhibiting intoxicating behavior would ask to be removed from the site. This was in response to some isolated incidents that occurred. So that was a joint effort and a community meeting between the library staff and law enforcement. And that was the suggestion. Lastly, the Joint Powers Committee met, and the intergovernmental retreat is going to be held on January 24th.
Thank you, Councilmember Carlson. Anyone else have anything to add? The only thing that I will add to this, I'll be brief, is that there was a communication that went out to landowners in Clay County regarding right of entry, a request, a letter that went out. And I want to just clarify briefly, I think there were some comments made in the public regarding this, regarding eminent domain. And I want to be clear that the letter that went out that's asking landowners to allow a right of entry for individuals working in conjunction with the diversion project is merely for surveying the land. And there's some language regarding geomorphic and biomorphic that I'm not going to get into right now, but I just want to make it clear that that letter is merely a request for a right of entry in order to conduct land surveys. This is nothing having to do with the Minnesota-Clay County Joint Powers taking any action on acquiring any land, nor is the city of Moorhead and the council taking any action therewith. So I just want to make sure that if there are any questions regarding that, the information in your letter for those landowners that are in rural Clay County, please contact those individuals. If you have any other questions outside of that, there will be a public hearing on this matter. I believe it is on the 11th is what my thought is, but if I am for some reason off, please refer to your letter. That's what I thought. It's December, thank you, Councilmember Carlson. on the 11th from 6 to 8 at the Clay County Courthouse. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. The Law Enforcement Center. I'm sorry, yes, the Law Enforcement Center, so my apologies for that. But nevertheless, I just wanted to make it clear what the letter's intent is and what it is not. So I'm not sure if anyone on the dais has any questions regarding that as well. Councilmember Hendrickson, you're also on the joint powers with me. Did I misinterpret anything or miscommunicate anything regarding the intent of that letter?
Where's the location again?
The Law Enforcement Center.
Thanks.
Thank you. And nice one, by the way. Other than that, the only other thing I think I want to mention is that we're still receiving public comment regarding the 300-foot boundary regarding the alcohol provision suggested ordinance change. So if there are any questions or comments or anything that people want to be heard on, please direct those questions and comments to the office of the city manager. With that, I will pass it over to Madam City Manager.
Mayor and Council, just two things we're asking for the public's interest or assistance with. We are still looking for that former, and we don't know if it's around Moorhead, iconic sign, the marquee sign. As we do our downtown planning, we would like to have that sign if somebody has it somewhere in storage or something. Otherwise, we're looking at possibly replicating it and making a place for it downtown. Much like the Fargo sign is a historic sign downtown, we have our own Moorhead sign, so we'd like to see if we can find it, but it's 50, 60, 70 years old at this point. But we are in search of it. We're still on social media looking for that. The other thing is the city of Moorhead will be celebrating its 150th anniversary as a city soon. And if anybody in the public is interested in participating in that planning of that whatever event or that celebration or the more likely series of celebrations and anything having to do with that 150-year celebration, we would reach out to me or the city somehow, and we would love to have the public join us in planning that.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. And also, I think you sent out an email to us also asking for folks as well, so they can.
I did, and I've received several comments back, so thank you.
Good. Okay. All right, so no executive session, item number 22, any new business? Hearing none, and I think we don't have any other citizens to address the council. Is there a motion to adjourn? Who said yes? Councilmember Dahlquist. Is there a second?
Second, yes.
By Councilmember Watson Curry. We are adjourned. Good night, Moorhead.
Good night.